The garment bag was open on Kelsey's lap. She was sitting in our parents' living room, with the cream fabric spilling out between her fingers like it already belonged to her. Mom stood beside her. Dad stood near the doorway. My dress. The one I had spent 4 months researching, 3 Saturdays visiting shops, 1 deposit paid from my own bank account on my own card, in my own name, because I had wanted to do this myself. It was on my sister's lap. Dad spoke first. He said Kelsey needed it sooner. He said it made more sense. He said it the way he said things he had already decided, which was with his hands loose at his sides and his voice completely even. Which was how I knew he was not going to change his mind regardless of what I said next. Mom nodded along like his words were simply true. Kelsey didn't look up from the dress. My hands were shaking. Not from weakness. From the effort of keeping what I was feeling inside the boundaries of a civil conversation. I forced my voice level. No, I said. 1 word. Just that. Dad looked at me with the expression he used when I stopped being convenient. Then you can pay us back, he said, for everything we've done for you. The list started immediately. Mom went first. She talked about the years in the same tone people used when presenting evidence, the tuition contributions, the car they had helped with, the apartment deposit when I was 22. Each thing named and measured like it had been recorded in a ledger somewhere specifically for this moment. Dad followed. His list overlapped with hers in places, which told me this had been discussed before I arrived. They had rehearsed. Kelsey still didn't look up from the dress. I noticed that. The way she sat while her parents dismantled me on her behalf without her needing to participate. She had mastered that skill early. When Mom called me selfish, I let the word land. Then I said the thing that was simply true. I paid the deposit, I said. Myself, with my own card. Mom's expression shifted, not toward acknowledgement, toward the next position. We'll reimburse you, she said. Like money was the issue. Kelsey looked up for the first time. Her eyes had the specific quality of someone who had been taught that other people's things could become hers if she wanted them enough and waited long enough. She smiled slightly. Prove it, she said. My name is Tessa Callahan. I have been the easy one in this family since I was old enough to understand what that phrase meant and what it cost me. The memory arrives now, the way it always did when I needed to understand how I had gotten here. I was 8. Kelsey was 5. She had wanted the larger piece of cake. I had taken it because I was older and had gotten there first. She cried. Long, loud, real-seeming tears. My mother looked at me the way she looked at problems. I gave Kelsey my piece. I was told, you're so mature. I was told you're such a good sister. I was told these things so consistently that I internalized them as identity before I understood they were instructions. I was praised for yielding, corrected for needing. Kelsey learned that crying produced results. I learned that wanting things produced conflict, and conflict meant I was the problem. That was 30 years ago. Back in the present, Mom was folding the top of the garment bag back over the dress, efficiently, like she was packing something that had already been sorted. She said calmly, if you don't cooperate, don't bother coming to Sunday dinner. I did not fight physically for the dress. That mattered to me, because there was a version of this moment where I grabbed the garment bag, where I said everything I had been accumulating for years, where I matched their volume and their certainty with my own. I didn't. Not because I was giving in, because I understood that fighting for the physical object in this room would give them the scene they needed to tell the story they had already written about me. That Tessa overreacts, that Tessa is difficult, that Tessa made a simple thing ugly. Mom zipped the garment bag shut. The sound of it. The small, clean sound of a zipper moving over teeth. I stood and watched her seal it the way you sealed something finished. I turned, walked toward the front door. No begging. No final statement. No looking back to see if my absence was producing the response that would mean they had noticed me leaving. I sat in my car in the driveway with my hands in my lap. My breathing steadied. Then my phone rang, an unfamiliar number. But the contact name I had saved months ago. Bridal shop. I picked up on the second ring. The woman on the other end introduced herself as Renee. Manager. The woman who had helped me select the dress on my first appointment and had remembered the specific things I told her about what I was looking for. Her voice had a careful quality, The careful of someone delivering information they understood had weight. "Tessa," she said. "Someone called us today pretending to be you." The sentence landed in the middle of my chest and sat there. "They had your name, your address, your appointment number," Renee continued. "They asked to change the pickup authorization." My stomach dropped. "We have a security process for situations like this," Renee said. "I need to ask you a verification question." She asked me to describe something specific about the dress, a detail that wouldn't appear in any paperwork, something only someone who had stood in the fitting room and looked at this gown closely would know. I answered. The silence on Renee's end had the quality of confirmation. "That's correct," she said. The caller couldn't answer that. She paused. "They tried to change the pickup name to Kelsey." I sat in my car in my parents' driveway and said nothing at all. I pulled my email up while still in the driveway. The deposit confirmation was exactly where I had saved it. Subject line, "Order confirmation, bridal." My name in the recipient field, my name in the billing section, my card number, last 4 digits, matching the card still in my wallet, the date of the transaction, the amount, the dress description. Mine. Every element of it mine in a documented, time-stamped, entirely provable way. My throat tightened, not from doubt, from the specific mix of relief and rage that arrived when you realized someone had tried to take something and had expected you not to be able to prove it was yours. I forwarded the email to Renee. Then I typed a question beneath it. "What are my options from here?" Renee responded within 4 minutes. The deposit receipt established me as the legal buyer. The attempted name change, which she had declined and documented, was on file. The account was currently locked pending my instruction. She said, "If they come in, we cannot release the dress to anyone except you." She said, "But I need you to come into the shop." She said, "Soon, Tessa. Today if you can." I started the car. I was driving when the memory arrived, 6 months ago. My engagement dinner. My fiancé Nate had told my parents that evening at a restaurant table, my grandmother's ring already on my finger. Mom cried. The small, composed kind. She hugged me and said congratulations with the warmth of someone completing a task. 3 weeks later, Kelsey announced her engagement. Mom cried differently for Kelsey. The full version. Both hands over her face. Sounds I had not heard from her in my direction in living memory. The family group chat erupted. Multiple paragraphs from aunts and cousins. Heart emojis in clusters. An aunt calling it the best news of the year. I had been engaged 3 weeks longer. I understood clearly in the weeks that followed what was actually happening. This was not about the dress. The dress was just the most recent surface. What my family was actually doing was correcting a hierarchy they believed had been disturbed. Kelsey was supposed to have more. More celebration, more attention, more beautiful things. My job was to make space for that. I had been performing that job since I was 8 years old with a piece of cake. My phone buzzed on the passenger seat. Nate's name. "Your mom called me. She said you're overreacting." I called Nate from the parking lot of the bridal shop. He answered immediately in the way he always answered when my name appeared on his screen during a situation. I gave him the short version. The dress on Kelsey's lap. The family living room. The deposit receipt. Renee's call. What my family had attempted to do to an account I had opened with my own name. Nate was quiet for a moment. "She called me to say you were stressed," he said. "That the whole thing was being blown out of proportion. She said if I loved you, I'd help you calm down." I leaned my head back against the headrest. "She tried to recruit you," I said. "Yeah," he said. "I noticed." He had told my mother something simple, that I decided what mattered to me. That his role was to support that, not redirect it. I loved him specifically for this. Then he told me what my mother had said in response. She had said, with the clipped precision of someone withdrawing an offer, "Then you're not family either." I sat with that for a moment. The specific ease with which she moved people from the inside column to the outside one. I took a breath and walked into the bridal shop. Renee had everything laid out. She had printed the call log from the day someone had called pretending to be me, 3 calls total. The first to ask about the order, the second to initiate the name change. The third, after the change had been declined, asking to speak to a manager. The attempted name change form was stamped declined in red. The timestamp showed it had been submitted 4 hours before my family sat me down in the living room with the garment bag open. 4 hours before. They had tried to take the dress through the shop before taking it from me in person. Both approaches on the same day. Renee watched me process that. I picked up my phone and opened the family calendar. The one where my parents had added all the major events, including Kelsey's engagement party and the venue they had booked. I found Kelsey's wedding date. I looked at it, then I looked at my own. Kelsey's wedding was 4 months after mine. Not sooner. Not even close to sooner. 4 months later. The story they had told me in that living room, the entire logical foundation of their demand, had been invented. My skin went cold. My phone buzzed. Kelsey, a text. I already told everyone it's my dress. Don't embarrass me. The family group chat was moving when I checked it. Messages had been building since that morning. Aunts, a cousin, my mother's longtime friend who had been added to the group years ago and never removed. Each message expressing a version of the same sentiment in different words. Why couldn't I just share? Kelsey was so excited and happy. This was such a special time for the family. One message, it's just a dress. My heart pounded. My hands were steady. I did not respond to any of it. I screenshot every message, the timestamps, the names, the specific language that had been coordinated too well to be spontaneous. Then I found the one from my aunt. Your mother said you agreed to this initially. What changed? I read it 3 times. My mother had told family members that I had agreed, that the conflict was me walking back on something I had consented to, that I had introduced chaos into a situation that had been settled. The lie was complete. It had a beginning, a middle, and a version of me that was entirely false. And it was circulating through a group chat to 31 people before I had said a single public word. I closed the chat, put my phone face down, breathed. Renee had everything laid out when I arrived. She had printed the call log from the day of the attempted impersonation. 3 calls total, the first asking about the order, the second initiating the name change request, the third, after the decline, requesting a manager. The attempted name change form was stamped declined with a red timestamp showing it had been submitted 4 hours before my family sat me down in the living room. 4 hours before the living room confrontation. Both approaches on the same day, the shop first. Renee watched me take that in. We document everything, she said. This kind of thing has a pattern we recognize. I asked if there was anything else. Renee hesitated, in the way of someone deciding whether to tell you something they think will be hard to hear. Yes, she said. While you were on your way here, someone called to book an alteration appointment. She looked at her screen. It was booked under your name, same account. I sat very still. Kelsey? I said. Renee nodded. They're attempting to access the account through a different entry point, she said. We need to lock it completely. Renee moved to her computer. She entered commands I watched without fully following. The navigation of someone who knew the system well enough that her hands moved ahead of her eyes. She set a new password on my account, sent only to my personal email. She flagged the dress file internally with a note visible to every staff member. Release to buyer only. Full verification required. She explained that this meant even if someone arrived with documentation, a receipt copy, a confirmation number, without the account password, no action could be taken. The dress was locked. I sat back. The audacity of the alteration appointment had settled into something that was not quite anger. More like the specific feeling of understanding a person clearly. Of seeing the exact shape of what someone was willing to do when they believed they could get away with it. Kelsey had tried to schedule alterations on a gown she did not own, on an account that wasn't hers, without asking me, without telling me, without any apparent belief that this required permission. Because in her experience, things she wanted rearranged themselves for her eventually. Renee looked at me with level eyes. If they come in angry, she said, security will be involved. Mom called that evening. She used the soft voice, the one that carried concern at the surface and pressure underneath. The voice she deployed when she needed something and had decided gentle was the most efficient approach. She said Kelsey was devastated. She used that word specifically. Not upset, not disappointed, devastated. The full weight version. She asked why I was doing this. I let the question sit for a moment. I'm not doing anything to Kelsey, I said. My voice was calm, completely calm. The kind of calm that was the product of a decision rather than the absence of feeling. She attempted to change my account. She tried to book alterations on a dress she doesn't own. She's the one doing something. Mom made a sound, the sound of someone pivoting. She said I was being technical. That family didn't operate that way. I said, then why did they try to take the dress before sitting me down? They called the shop first, 4 hours before. Mom went quiet. Then her voice changed, dropped out of the soft register entirely. Then don't expect us at your wedding, she said. If you keep this up, we won't be there. The call ended. I sat at my kitchen table and tried to understand what that cost me. The idea of walking down the aisle without my parents arrived like something physical. It sat in the middle of my chest, heavy and specific. Not abstract grief. Concrete, immediate grief. My mother not there, my father not there. The seats where parents sat. The particular front row visibility of people who raised you watching you begin something new, empty. I sat down on the kitchen floor, not dramatically. My legs simply stopped cooperating and I sat where I was. Nate found me there 20 minutes later. He sat beside me on the floor. Didn't ask me to stand up or explain or process faster. He found my hand and held it without turning it into anything other than what it was. We'll be okay, he said. Not we don't need them. Not they're the problem. Just the simple, sustaining thing. We'll be okay. I believed him. Not completely, but enough to keep breathing. Then my phone buzzed from the counter above me. I reached up without standing. A voicemail. Dad. His voice in the message was the voice he used when he had decided the time for gentleness was over. Return the dress, he said, or we cut you off. I listened to the voicemail twice. Then I thought carefully about what cut you off actually meant in the context of my specific life. I had supported myself financially since I was 24. My rent was mine. My health insurance was mine through my employer, my car payment, my groceries, my utilities, my savings account. Every financial element of my adult life had been my own for 7 years. The threat was not money. The threat was access. Access to family warmth, to holidays, to the group chat and the Sunday dinners and the particular texture of belonging that came from being inside a family rather than outside it. That was real. I did not minimize it, but I sat with another understanding. The warmth had never been unconditional. I had been paying for it in compliance for as long as I could remember. The dinners and holiday tables and the sense of belonging had always carried a requirement. Remain the easy one. The one who yields. What was being taken away was not warmth. It was the performance I had to give to access it. I typed one response to Dad. I won't discuss this without respect. His reply arrived in under 2 minutes. Then you're dead to us. I called Renee the next morning. Not about anything specific. I needed to hear from someone operating in the factual register rather than the emotional one. Renee was good at that. Her professional composure had been consistent through everything. She confirmed the account was secured. No activity since the lock. The flag on the dress file was visible to all staff members and the shop owner. Then she asked a question. Have you thought about whether you want a backup option? A secondary dress? Just in case. I understood what she was asking. She was asking whether I was planning around the possibility that my family would find a way I hadn't anticipated. Whether I wanted a contingency that removed their ability to affect my wedding day regardless of what they did next. My heart broke a little at the question. Not at Renee. At what the question represented. That I was now someone who needed a contingency plan for her own wedding dress. That the people who should have been celebrating with me had made me build safeguards instead. I said I would think about it. Renee said, also, Kelsey called again this morning. She paused. She told one of our staff members that you were unstable. Unstable. I sat with the word. This was not new behavior. This was the playbook deployed when other methods failed. When I didn't yield, when financial argument was impossible because the receipt existed, the next tool was my credibility. If Tessa is unstable, her refusal becomes a symptom rather than a decision. If Tessa is irrational, protecting her own property becomes suspect. If Tessa can't be trusted to read reality, the people around her need to manage her for her own good. I had watched this applied to others in my family, to anyone who held a firm position that inconvenienced the majority. Now it was being directed at me through a bridal shop staff member. I told Renee what I needed. A written statement, I said. Everything that happened. The calls. The attempted name change. The alteration appointment. Kelsey characterizing me to your staff. All of it, dated and signed. Renee said yes immediately. She would have it prepared that afternoon. One more thing, she added. Her voice shifted. The shift of someone about to say something requiring a response. The shop's caller ID just showed your mother's number. Renee called me at 2:17 in the afternoon. She spoke quietly, the specific quiet of someone in a room where something was happening that required managing. They're here, she said. Your mom and your sister. They came into the shop. My pulse spiked. They're asking for the dress, she said. I've explained the buyer authorization policy. I heard something in the background. A voice I recognized. My mother's voice performing distress at a volume designed to produce an audience. I've told them the dress cannot be released to anyone except you, Renee said. Her voice was completely steady. They are not accepting that. I asked if she needed me to come. She said not yet. Stay where I was. Then, your mother is asking for a manager, and your sister is. A pause. In the background, Kelsey's voice. The specific register she used when she was translating frustration into performance for observers. I'll hold, I said. Renee came back on after a moment. I've called security to the floor, she said. Still steady, still professional. Only the buyer can authorize pickup. I've made that clear. They are not leaving. I got the full account from Renee the next morning. She described it the way people described things they had witnessed and wanted to document accurately. In sequence. Without embellishment. My mother had cried. Not quietly, the loud public version. The one that turned an argument into a spectacle and made everyone watching uncomfortable enough to want resolution regardless of who was right. Kelsey had accused the staff of discrimination. Renee described her exact phrasing, that the shop was choosing sides in a family matter, that certain employees were biased against her specifically, that this was being treated as a legal issue when it was simply personal. My father had arrived 20 minutes after they did. His presence had been intended as additional weight. He had spoken to Renee in the voice he used when he wanted to communicate that he was a serious person whose preferences carried consequences. Renee had repeated the policy. The scene lasted 45 minutes. The shop had filed an incident report, detailed and time-stamped, staff witness accounts, a description of each statement made. Renee was quiet for a moment. Then, Tessa, the police were almost called. Not because anyone was in physical danger, because my family had refused to leave. Dad called on Sunday morning. His voice was the careful version, assembled to sound like reason after several days of things that were not reasonable. He said, let's talk like adults. He said he understood I was upset. He said there had been some overreaction on both sides. He offered a compromise. Kelsey could wear the dress for the photo session before the ceremony. I could wear it for the ceremony itself. Both of us would get something. I listened to every word. Then I sat with what he had actually described. He had proposed that someone else wear my wedding dress before I wore it. On my wedding day, in my wedding photographs. As the solution to the problem of that person attempting to take my wedding dress. He still believed my life was a resource to be divided. He still believed that my ownership of something I had paid for was negotiable if Kelsey wanted it enough. That my specific, documented, legally established purchase was a starting point for negotiation rather than a settled fact. I said one word. No. The line went quiet. Then Dad's voice returned, stripped of the careful version. Then you'll regret this, he said quietly. The call ended. Renee called on Monday afternoon. She said the shop owner wanted to speak with me directly. Her name was Petra Lund. She had reviewed the complete incident file and the no trespass documentation and wanted to handle the next steps personally. My stomach tightened. Not from worry that I was in trouble. From the exhaustion of a situation that kept requiring new people to manage it. I said, of course, when? Renee said as soon as I could come in. I arrived at 10 the following morning. Petra Lund was not what I had expected. She was efficient and direct, and looked at me with the clear eyes of someone who had been running a business for many years and had developed firm opinions about what she would and would not allow inside it. She said the shop could not permit clients' family members to harass staff members. She said it plainly, not as a prelude to something longer, as the core of what she needed me to understand. They were issuing a no trespass notice. My mother, my father, my sister. All three names, formally barred from the premises. She said they needed me to sign the supporting paperwork. "Can you come back this afternoon?" she asked. I came back at 2:00. Petra had the documents ready. 3 forms. The no-release authorization confirming I was the sole buyer and that no other party could claim, alter, or pick up the dress without my written and verified consent. The no trespass paperwork documenting the incident and the formal exclusion of 3 named individuals, and a statement of my account of events for the shop's records should anything escalate further. I read each document before signing. Carefully. Every line. Then I picked up the pen. My name went on each signature line in the steady handwriting of someone who had decided what she was doing and was doing it without hesitation. Tessa Callahan. On every page. It felt like something. Not revenge, not victory, something quieter and more sustaining, like writing my name back onto something from which it had been nearly erased. Petra thanked me, said the dress would be ready for pickup on the scheduled date without complication. I was walking toward the door when my phone buzzed. "Mom, a text. If you do this, you will lose the family." I read it, put my phone in my bag, and walked out into the afternoon. Petra called me on a Wednesday. She wanted to confirm my order status and walk me through what had happened since the no trespass notice was issued. She said this kind of follow-up was their standard practice after an incident. She confirmed I was the only person they would speak with about the dress. Any call, any visit, any inquiry about my order would be redirected with one sentence. "This buyer's information is confidential." Then she told me my parents had called to request a refund. In my name. They had contacted the shop claiming I had changed my mind and was requesting a full refund. They had provided my name, my address, and a version of my voice they had apparently expected the system to accommodate. The request had been denied because the security question existed, because the password had been changed, because Renee had documented everything beginning with that first impersonation call. Petra said, "We also received a call from a florist." She paused. "Kelsey's wedding florist. They wanted to understand why a dress order connected to your sister's name had been flagged. They said they'd heard there was an issue with her vendor accounts." The word flagged. The information was traveling outward now, into the world my family had not anticipated. Kelsey's plan had required everything to stay contained. That was its fundamental requirement. For me, not to push back. For the shop to hand over the dress without question. For the family version of events, that I had agreed, that this was reasonable, that I was the difficult one. To be the only version circulating. Third parties didn't carry that version. The florist knew there was a flag. The shop's incident report existed in a formal system. The no trespass notice had 3 names attached to documented behavior. The refund attempt in my name was logged with a timestamp. Kelsey's image as the happy, uncomplicated bride had been built on the assumption that her actions had no record, that she could reach into my life and take things and there would be no documentation because there never had been before. There was a record now. My parents scrambled. I knew because a cousin texted me saying things were difficult and Kelsey was upset about something involving vendors. She didn't have details. Just the shape of a situation that had escaped the living room where it was supposed to stay. Then Dad left a voicemail, his last one. His voice was flat, in the specific way of someone who had run out of tools. "If you walk down that aisle without us," he said, "don't come back." On my wedding day I wore my dress. Mine, the one I had researched for 4 months, found on a Saturday in February. Stood in a fitting room wearing while Renee told me the silhouette was exactly right. The dress I had paid the deposit on. The one my family had tried to take through a phone call, a living room confrontation, an alteration appointment on a locked account, and a refund request in my name. The dress I had signed my name to in Petra's shop in the steady handwriting of someone who had decided. My parents were not there. Kelsey was not there. There was no confrontation, no last-minute arrival. Just their absence, clean and clear, where control used to stand. The people on both sides of the aisle were people who had never once asked me to make myself smaller so someone else could feel larger. Nate was at the end of the aisle. I walked toward him in my dress, in a room full of people who loved me without conditions attached to that love. I had been afraid of losing my family for so long that I had never examined what keeping them had actually cost me. The answer was everything I was now walking toward. Losing them wasn't punishment. It was freedom. They tried to take my dress to keep me small. So I walked into my new life without asking their permission to